Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell Killer!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Tip Sheet. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to preview, well, it's the final regulation round of a couple of the competitions, in the New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg, as well as big games for NRLW and the Halfordham Women's Premiership. Is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, we're recording on a Friday morning, so a little bit later than usual, but also earlier than usual. Funny how that works. Day late, early start. Here we are. How you doing, mate?
Well, this is being recorded on a Friday because it's been a busy few days, and we'll talk about some of that in a moment. Just before we do, shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Great sponsors to have been with us for so long, loyal to TCT, loyal to the Eels. Greg and the team, what can we say? Thanks. Also, no matter what platform you're listening to us on, if you can give it a like and a subscribe, that really helps with the algorithm and helps to keep putting out the content to more and more Parramatta supporters and to rugby league supporters in general. And John, we should also mention that we're on extra early tomorrow at Parramatta Leagues Club because it's a 3:00 game. And there is the NRLW kicking off at 12:45. We're starting at midday in the bistro with special guest John Muggleton. Now, there's some great topics that we're going to be talking to John Muggleton about and some stuff that's really pertinent to Parramatta going into next year. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation. You're maybe even at the moment thinking, hang on, what are we going to be talking about here? I just got a little word about something we can talk to Muggo about to get some really, really great insights. And, so we're on at midday. That gives you a chance to come into the bistro, have a feed, have a drink, listen to the footy talk, still get over there for the NRLW. We do understand there will be people who will be over there even earlier because the New South Wales Cup kicks off in the morning over there. So it's a big day of football. It's like the old days of 3 grades of rugby league at the stadium. But we're there in Para Leagues, the home of the Eels, in the bistro from midday. Come in, have a listen to the footy talk, come up and say g'day afterwards. And of course, whilst I'm just mentioning that and saying g'day afterwards, we really appreciate the people who've been coming and introducing themselves to us. And there was a member event on Wednesday night at the Commercial Hotel, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But a shout out to Paul, who's one of our listeners, and Paul came up and introduced himself to me and was, just talking about some of the things we cover in the podcasts. And just wanted to give a shout out to you, Paul. Thanks for coming up and saying g'day. Really appreciate you listening to the podcast, and really appreciate you, just introducing yourself and coming up and having a chat at that member event. So, John, without further ado, I want to jump into that member event. So this was a 10-year plus member event that was held at the Commercial Hotel in Parramatta. It's been a long while since I've been to that pub in Parramatta, but it was interesting because this balcony level that's inside the pub, it's like in this big horseshoe shape. And I'm not sure what they host in there on weekends, but I'm assuming it could even be like a nightclub set up there. But the players came in just after the event started, mingled with all the guests that were there, moved around talking to members, having photos, signing things. Adam Hawes was the MC. He did some interviews of players. It was probably one of the best, if not the best, member event that I've been to. and I think it was really important this year to make that connection with members. And, it was worded as a loyalty event because it is that 10-year plus. So there were people there who'd been members for, I think, at the start of the night, Adam Hawes did a quick survey, who's the longest serving member that was there. And I think there was someone there that was over 40 years of membership. Now, what I will say is I've had a few people that have contacted me after I've put up some socials, and, they've sent me messages or they've put up comments on our socials just saying that they hadn't received an email about the event and had been long-term members. Can I suggest that you get in touch with the club? Sometimes there are issues with databases.
Archival database issues, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually had the same thing happen for me. And I was lucky. I had someone mention to me about this email that had gone out, and I got in touch with the club, and my membership was listed as a lot shorter than what it was, and it had to do with, I'm sure it had to do with the type of membership that I was on before the change that where I'd upgraded and I'd had added people to the membership. So I'm sure that there were issues around that, but it was rectified, and thankfully it was rectified where I was able to go onto a waiting list if they were able to invite more people, and that was when I got the invite. And it's unfortunate that these things happen, but as you just said, with archival databases, it sometimes does happen. And so my recommendation is just get in touch with the club. Make sure that your records are updated, because it's a very simple thing to get done. And hopefully then the future loyalty events that you get an invitation to. So John, look, it was a great event. It was what was funny was watching Yoko ending up with photos being taken where she's not a photo person, and Joe Offengowie in particular come over and he says, "How about a photo, eh?" And she was like, "Huh?" And he goes, "Aren't you a supporter?" And I said, "Yeah, she's a supporter." And he's like, "Okay, well, hand over your phone. We'll take a photo."
Not taking no for an answer.
Yeah, not taking no for an answer. Right. So he was in a good mood. But then when I congratulated him on his personal season that he'd had, he basically said to me, "I'm not interested in talking about my personal season. That doesn't matter. From a team perspective, it's just been completely unacceptable." And he wouldn't accept personal congratulations in that sort of season. He said these sorts of seasons aren't why he plays football, and he said we've just got to be better, and and as I said, the fact that a player wouldn't accept personal congratulations for how he'd performed individually, and I think he's a very good chance of picking up the Ken Thornett medal. He'll certainly be in calculations for it. But I think that says a lot for him and what his mindset is going forward. So, I wanted to give Joe a special mention in that regard. But look, in terms of the interaction with the members, it was really, really good because as far as I could see, it must have been close to the full squad that was there. If it wasn't, it would have been that there was like a few exceptions that weren't able to make it. And a couple of the young blokes were there way past when the players were advised that it was time for them to move on, because these days with RLPA agreements and things like that appearances at events and that sort of thing, you'll find the club will let them know, okay, if you want to go, you can go now. And quite a number of players stayed past that point of their own volition, and there were a couple in particular that were still talking to members even at the point when I was leaving. So, give a shout out there. They probably shouldn't have been doing it. Maybe I shouldn't have been saying this, but I guess that's their decision to do so. So, really, really positive event to have happen in such a negative year. So shout out to the club for having that, and also to the players. John, I'm really feel like I'm rambling here, so I don't want to be like I'm dominating here, but I just thought I'll get some of this out. But now I want to jump to you, because at that event, they gave the early news about Hopgood extending for another 2 years, and then it pretty much just after it would have come out as an official announcement on all the Eels platforms. Good news, mate.
Yeah, you can't complain about this. Club being proactive on the front foot, securing one of their core talents before they become open to November 1 negotiations for rival clubs. Like, that's just good business. He's been obviously had a bit of bad luck with the injury picked up in State of Origin 3, but beyond that, he's been rock solid for the club. He's one of the central pillars when it comes to leadership. Young, on the up, signing him to the end of 2027. It's a really good piece of work by, not just Jason Ross, because this would have been in the works for Mark O'Neill and company for a bit now. And yeah, they've got on top of it and done a great job. And for everything that we've complained about recruitment and retention across, the last 12 plus months, this is how they should be conducting business both internally and externally. So well done.
Yeah, and I guess also it is a vote of confidence in Jason Riles and the new coaching staff, because the club had been talking to Hopgood, and there were some rumours around that he was just waiting to see what was going to happen with the new coach, and that's a natural.
That's not unreasonable. That is not unreasonable.
Yeah. Like you have to expect that players want to know who
new
a coach
boss.
is going to be.
New boss comes in, want to get a feel for it. So, yeah. And the fact that this hasn't played out in the media, on like through all of that, like there was literally, I think there was like one article at that point where it's like, yep, just going to hold off and get a sort of read of the new room, and both parties have done that and come out and great timing. Obviously, announcing it to members at the event was a fantastic way to kick things off there, and then just good news in general for the club and for fans. So very happy with this. J'maine, I don't know how the captaincy is going to play out next year, because there's all sorts of things being juggled in the air. There's talk about Gufferson moving to a sort of bench super utility role. Mitchell Moses is obviously there as well. So however it shakes out, you'd think that J'maine Hopgood's probably going to be part of it in some capacity.
Yeah, and of course we spoke about the fact that there are rumours going around with regard to Eels signings. Look, the thing is, the Eels will be making signings. It's, they have players that have finished their contracts. They have players who are moving on. We know that. We know that Zach Sini's already committed to being overseas. We know that it's in all likelihood Dejan Arce is heading overseas as well. The word is pretty strong about Reg moving to the Dragons. So when all of these things are happening, there are roster spots, and all the roster spots are not going to be filled by people internally. So there will be signings. There's a few bits and pieces that we're hearing that we're really, really excited about. If it's and I'm not going to throw names out there or anything like that, because there is no point in throwing the names out there, because once you do that, there's either two things that are going to happen. If the negotiations are at a delicate stage, you don't know what the speculation around a particular person might create, and especially when the season's not over yet, and And you don't even know, who knows if there are players that are still under deals or that sort of thing.
You
So,
don't want to be disrespectful to those processes. And in saying that, the Eels have been publicly linked to some players already.
yes,
Who, if they were to eventuate, I don't think anyone would complain about.
No,
Dean Hawkins has been linked as a suited to replace Dejan Arce. Rock solid signing. I think we've been tied to Blake Wilson. Great pickup for the back line. Like, if that happens, that is just a frontline contender for your back line, and at the very worst, an outstanding depth option. So the club seems to be doing. We know there aren't superstars out there right now. We know that the player market, it's not barren, but it's not ripe with game changers out there. But the way these sort of whispers and murmurs come about, it looks like the club's doing some smart business, and that's all you want from them, especially with a new coach at the helm and on short time to turn things around for the roster. It looks like there's some good things in the works.
Yeah, I guess that's what we're trying to say is that, with some of the names that we're hearing, is that using that word, that term that you just said, smart business, that would be, I'd probably jump on board with your terminology there, John, and agree with that. So we won't say anything more at this stage. There'll probably be a bit of speculation might come out across the media or what have you. If anything does get out there, we don't want to add names to that. And as we said, when we spoke about it on Tuesday, we were just talking about names that were already out there and just adding our comment on it. Now, the only other thing we wanted to talk about quickly that's come out since the news podcast, and we don't really want to leave anything that's in the news cycle all the way till our podcast on Tuesday next week, is the extraordinary mail about the Tigers, the Balmain Tigers, wanting to go alone or exploring going alone in that joint venture. John, I'm absolutely astounded because, from my perspective, as a club, the West Tigers, as a roster, I think the West Tigers are perhaps on the rise, and it might look like that on the table. But I think they've got some very good pieces going into next year. They'll have, I think, an exceptional spine. And they've got, what we've seen from them this year is they've got talented youngsters. And, it hasn't clicked in all the games, but you look at them and you go, geez, that's a likely looking player. The addition of a Jerome Luai to the spine, to me, is a big in for them. I don't get why, if they're looking at being, more positive about next year, why all of a sudden there'd be this talk that would effectively split them. And I don't understand what Balmain would have to offer as a single entity when, as far as I'm aware, they don't have the resources.
No, I don't know if there's official reports that can specify, but I'm just having a look on Reddit, and there's talk about it's like I don't know if the split is this big, but it's like a 10% ownership split to the Tigers side, and then the rest being to the Balmain, to the West side. Look, Wests have been the big financial backers in this joint venture.
Yeah,
like that has been well known for a long time. West Ashfield and just Wests out that way to Campbelltown, covering a lot of the heavy lifting here. What an outright! This is so far from left field in terms of having a board member or a director say something like that. That you've got, I think Benny Elias coming out swinging with like some haymakers, talking about how outrageous this is. Farcical. To paraphrase or even verbatim, I think he said absolutely farcical comments. He's not wrong. Like,
yeah.
Why would you say that? Like,
yeah, is it someone going rogue?
Yeah,
with
like
these sort of comments.
Exactly.
Is it because they're getting fun?
A $40 million upgrade to Leichhardt Ovals on the docket, but that's not going to carry them. Like as an
No.
individual entity, splitting away, fragmenting their junior development base away from a huge catchment out at sort of Campbelltown, Macarthur. Segmenting their supporter base. I've talked about in the past that in terms of commercial branding, obviously the Tigers, it's a strong part of that. You see the Tiger logo and you think Balmain, but the reality is that West are anchoring in financially are anchoring this franchise. So don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, financially anchoring, probably talent anchoring, pathways, aspects. Now, don't get me wrong. We would look at it and go, look, there's a very strong supporter base that would have always identified as being Balmain supporters. But the joint venture has now existed for over 20 years now.
Yeah, over 2 decades. It's a long time.
Yeah. So you're talking about all the work that would have gone into creating people who identify with the joint venture brand and undoing that. And to what end, as anyone that would have common sense would just go like, this is no good. And as I said, I'd like to think from their perspective that this is just someone that's gone rogue with comments and the media's grabbed hold of it and, trying to make something more of it than what in reality it could possibly be. The only thing is, if it's ridiculous, it's not going to do, it probably won't do any damage if it's ridiculous. If they're seriously considering it, the Balmain side of it, I'd say, have a look in the mirror. Have a look in the mirror. Read the landscape of where you're at as well. So anyway, that's their problem, not ours, John. So we'll press forward because we once again have 5 grades of Eels matches to preview. And as I said, it's a big match day on Saturday out at Combank Stadium. The final home match of the season, members appreciation round, fans being allowed out onto the stadium after full time. So, it's really a big event to not completely wrap up the season, but it does wrap up the season for New South Wales Cup on that day. And, of course, this weekend, as you said, also potentially wraps it up for Jersey Flegg, although we've got fingers crossed for results to work their way. So let's start off with that Jersey Flegg, John.
Yeah, so before we get to the team list, the 2 balls in the air that are being juggled outside their control, the second-place Bulldogs taking on the 6th-place Sea Eagles out of Belmore, Saturday, 12 o'clock p.m. So the Eels will actually have half an idea of the result because their own game's taking place 1 hour later. So the full time will probably happen about our half time. So they'll know if the lesser part of the equation has been achieved on that side. The bigger part is in the evening. Saturday, 5:20 p.m. Sharks hosting the Warriors 5v11. So the Eels need they need the Sharks to lose to the Warriors, and then they would like the Bulldogs to beat the Seagulls. If the Sharks win, it's over because they're half a win ahead of the Eels, and they got that draw in their favour, like a literal draw, not the scheduling draw, a tie. And if the Sharks lose, the Eels then either need the Manly to lose, or they need the Eels need to beat the Dragons by a combination of points differential of 21 plus whatever the Seagulls have beaten the Bulldogs by. That is their formula to get into the finals. And the team that is going to be trying to do that is this. Zach Hunter at fullback, Moe Alamadine and Ollie McCarthy on the wings. Antioch Faitala Mariners back in the centres this week. He goes in there in place of Michael Abdo, Arazan for the other centre for quarter there. Matty Hunter and Josh Lynner in the halves. Sam Tuivasa and Teenkin Brown the props. Riley Smith at dummy half. Jock Brazel, Dom Destratus and Saxon Pryke round out an excellent forward pack. Max Tupou, Tyrese Lakini, Damascus Nemia and Raf Destratus, the interchange players. So pretty much their full strength team, 60s. No Arpa Twiddle still. I think that's
he's gone for the year.
So that there you go. But in saying that, Zach Hunter has been excellent, playing either in relief of Arpa or just having his own opportunities at 1 and 6 this year. So he'll do a fantastic job. And yeah, they're taking on the St George Illawarra Dragons. This one kicking off 1:00 p.m. out at Eric Tweedale Stadium. It's going to be another tense finish, isn't it? Not too dissimilar to what happened at Penrith last year, where we sweat on results beyond their control, and then maybe have the New South Wales Rugby League Match Centre spit out the wrong information. But yeah, they will have to obviously take care of business in this game, and then they'll be sweating bullets waiting on that 5:20 p.m. kickoff game between the Warriors and the Sharks.
Yeah, so look, first of all, shout out to Arpa. I think he's probably gone under the knife by now, but he's been a big part of the season for the Jersey Flegg. But as you said, Zach Hunter's done very well. They've had a real next man up mentality this year, the Jersey Flegg. They've been really enjoyable to watch, especially when they've been on this run. They've been arguably the form team for 2/3 of the season. Like,
nearly 4 months. Nearly 4 months.
Yeah, and it feels like it's wrong if they don't qualify for finals football, because believe me, they would do some major damage. It just ended up being that they were just so far behind the 8 ball at the start of the season, and it's felt like for the last 2 months that the teams that are ahead of them just kept getting enough wins to keep ahead.
Yep.
And they hadn't been able to breach that gap. And every time you'd look at the table and think, if they breached it, have they narrowed it in any way? And it'd be like frustratingly still out of reach. It just would feel ashamed for them to finish one game short, because what have they won? 14 of the last 17 or something like that, whatever it is that they're up to that they've won. And just a really well-balanced team. Forwards really dominating, backs playing off it. As I mentioned before, the next man up mentality happening. I think the coaches have done a great job with the team this year and really got them playing for each other. Some of the games that I've seen this year, they brought a brutality to their performances, and they've just got stronger as the year's gone on. Look, their last round wasn't their best football against the Silk Tails, but they still looked like they were in control for all of the game. It would have been nice for them to have got a bigger win from a differential. I mean, it was still like a comfortable win, but they probably would have been upset with the fact that they let in a couple of late tries, which took away from their differential. But anyway, going to tip a win by about 12 points in this one, John.
Yeah, I think the Eels will be looking to not necessarily sign off on the year in style, but they will be looking to put their best foot forward with all the other factors outside their control still in the air. And in saying that, even if things go against them, Sixties, even if not so much the Manly Bulldogs game goes the wrong way, but particularly the Cronulla Warriors game, and that just completely jam shut that door. There's a lot of guys here that feel like they're playing for potentially a spot in the preseason. New coach, new coaching staff. There's roster spots to be filled out still. A lot of that's going to be happening externally, don't get me wrong, but not to say you can't get a shot at an NRL preseason by signing off, not only just because of this result, that'd be silly, but putting a strong last start result up there for the coaching staff to be intrigued by goes a long way. So I think there's...
Oh, yeah, and there are already players in the squad who we know will be part of the full-time training, the likes of Sam Tuivasa and Saxon Pryke.
Yep.
I'm not sure what Jock Brazel's status is next season, but he's been around the squad now for a couple of years. And I would think that with the sort of season that Riley Smith has had, that he must have featured in discussions, about at least moving up to, a pre-season with the Eels. I know he was a late addition to the squad coming into the last pre-season, or just after the pre-season started. It was around there, so he wasn't part of that full-time pre-season squad. But man, he's had a season and a half.
Yeah, fine year.
I'll be stunned if he's not the Jersey Flegg Player of the Year at the Ken Thornett Medal. He's certainly gonna feature in the awards. After that, it gets really tough because of the high standard that the team's played at for, as I said, this back 2/3 of the season. So the rest of the awards, the decisions that are made around them, I think will be really, really interesting. And we've had all these players that have had a taste of New South Wales Cup. Moe Alamadine's gone up and had a taste of New South Wales Cup, as well as, the forwards. So, and then we've got players that are on the part of that extended Jersey Flegg squad that are actually playing in New South Wales Cup this weekend as well. So, or have been called up at different times to play in that, where they haven't necessarily wanted to disrupt the Jersey Flegg team in this later stage of the season. So they've had some valuable experience as well. So, interesting times from a future perspective. But now let's get to the Harvey Norman match, mate.
Yeah, so we move now to Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, 6:00 p.m. kickoff at Ringrose Park. It's not an in-house derby, but definitely a strong affiliation to the Wentworthville Magpies here as they take on the Eels. Wentworth, of course, undefeated in this competition. They are the front runners by some margin in outstanding touch across the park. Eels look like this. Another swap at fullback and wing this week with Debbie Dwahi and Yasmin Baker switching around. Debbie in the fullback role this week with Baker and Alicia Bell on the wings. Lindsay Tui named to start in the centre 60, also part of the NRLW setup this week, so wait and see if there's a replacement there. But right now, named to start here in number 3 with Aaliyah Harmono in the number 4. Bahuka Berryman Duff and Sarah Dimmick in the halves. Front row sees Rashay Farmasui and Lasalio Sita Payne starting. They've probably been two of Parramatta's form front rowers there. Big dynamic wrecking balls, both of them. And I suppose the only question will be, is there too much imbalance in starting both of your sort of power props there? But either way, they've got the 8 and 10 on their backs with Chelsea Makira at dummy half. At dummy half. Bella Sanford and Fontaine Tafura on the edges. Riverly Arlaw lock forward. On the interchange, Ashley Pottinger, Alita Namose, Talisha Maiva and Tahila Varluanga. Caitlin Pearden and Rory Muir, the 2 reserves.
Well, look, there's probably not too much that needs to be said for the team other than completions, and it's what we're saying every week. You cannot take advantage of the talent in the team until the team is able to complete at something, at least at 75%, hopefully higher. They've been fluctuating between 50 and 65% for a lot of the season.
Yep.
And it's not going to get it done. It's just not going to get it done. The fact that they are competitive on the scoreboard, despite those sort of completion rates, speaks to what they're capable of. But execution just isn't happening on the match days, and I think, look, it's as straightforward as that. I'm not going to go into any prediction with them with this. Only that I'll simply say, if they complete above 75%, I think they're a chance. If they don't complete above that, I can't tip a win.
No, not against the form team in the competition as well. Wentworth have been very good this year in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, and they're going to be a tough ask to beat, even if the Eels can muster that 75% completion rate threshold that you're talking about. But we hold out hope against hope there that they can be competitive, and in terms of individual talent, they're certainly not short on that. which takes us now to the next game, 60s, as we move on to reserve grade. Part of that 3-game slate out at CommBank Stadium. The New South Wales Cup, well, they will be signing off regardless of how this one plays out. They don't even have to worry about other results. And they look like this is a take on the St George Dragons or St George Illawarra Dragons in this grade. It is St George Illawarra. So there we go. They are a joint venture in reserve grade. But Lorenzo Molitalo named fullback with Hayes Dunster and Isaac Lumi on the wings. Young Ethan Martin gets a final chance to push his stocks up before the preseason kicks off under Jason Rolls, with Morgan Harper also on the centres. Zach Sini, 5'8". What a way to sign off as an Eels 60s, playing in the front line there. Ethan Sanders will be his halves partner there. Reece Alderton and Tony Mattielli, the starting bookends. Matty Arthur in his final game as a Parramatta Eel. Before he joins the Newcastle Knights, will be at dummy half. Matt Dory, Will Lewis, a couple of back rowers there. Will getting a good extended run here in the New South Wales Cup, and hopefully he's better for it moving into season 2025 next year. And then Brock Parker locking the scrum. Then we've got a very young interchange. Mitch Chester as a half backline utility. Paddy Spence as a dummy half forward/backline utility. Yaya Ayachi as the backup dummy half/lock forward. And then Seb Piakala making his cup debut here for the Eels. SG ball player this year. Big, dynamic offloading forward. I thought he had a very good year in SG ball 60s. And then he gets a chance now to make an impression in New South Wales Cup. In saying that, the construction of his bench is putting a lot of pressure on the likes of Alderton and Mattielli and Parker here to do some big minutes. So we have to wait and see if there's going to be any adjustments or tuning to that interchange. But as it stands, a very young interchange. Yeah,
absolutely. It is going to be a big ask, and it will be interesting if it stays unchanged how they will work the rotations. Look, in all honesty, I couldn't even begin to guess how they will work that. You talk about this being their last appearance of the year. Obviously, some of them as well will probably have to train next week because the NRL still has a week to go if they're part of the full-time training squad.
They will need opposed players as well, just for...
Yeah, they will be needed for that. Now, whether that means they come in for one session or all of the sessions next week, I don't know. But yeah, as far as the playing is concerned, well, I guess it means maybe they don't get to have a Mad Monday until after they've the first graders completed their season. So look, honestly, again, this is another one where I'm just not sure how it's going to play out. I think it again will come down to what the mindset is in this last game of the season. So unfortunately, we won't be able to be over there to watch this game live. We'll have to watch on video what happens with this one. I'm not about to make a prediction in it, John. I've just got I can't pick at all because, as I said, I don't know that I can get inside their mindset for this game. So, which now gets us to the NRLW having their first appearance at CommBank Stadium for the season.
Yeah, looking to bounce back from a difficult and frustrating loss to the Newcastle Knights on the back of those bizarre circumstances that led to a big delay of game there. Now refocus and host the St George Illawarra Dragons. 12:45 p.m. kickoff this one out at CommBank Stadium. Eels look like this. Not too many changes. That's to be expected. Don't need to be making rash, aggressive moves after a loss to Newcastle. But Abby Church at fullback. You got Faye and Donovan on the wings. The two R's from Rugby Union, Rory Owen and Rosie Kelly in the centres. Then you got Cassie Towie Hiku, Rachel Pearson as your 6 and 7. Front row sees Elsie Abbott and Maddie Jones working together once again with Tanika Todd-Hunter at dummy half. Chloe Jackson on the right, Mahalia Murphy on the left when it comes to the edge back rowers. Kennedy Charrington locking the scrum. On the interchange, Rosemary Beckett, Tyler Amiatu, Jade Fanua, and then Lindsay Tui, which was what led me to those comments earlier with the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership 60s. Lindsay named to start there, but also to play on the bench here. She's clearly not going to be across those two games in different roles, so you'd imagine that someone else is coming into that HNWP backline with Lindsay presenting a very intriguing option here. Dynamic ball runner, powerful and fast. Had a great Origin 19s game up until she broke her jaw. No, that's not true. She broke her jaw and then still had a great game, scoring a try off a short dropout. She broke her jaw forcing that line dropout. So tough customer there. But the Eels making that one change on the interchange with Lindsay taking that place from Tafua Asua. And they're taking on a Dragons outfit. Tegan Berry, a very talented fullback there. Bobby Law's back this week. That's a handy inclusion to the back line. You got Racine McGregor. Who else is there that really jumps out? That's the pick of the back line there. Their forward pack probably not as well hailed as it has been in the past. So the Eels will have opportunities here with their established forwards like Albert. And then obviously the dynamic players like Murphy and Fanua and Amiatu here. Going to be very interesting to see how they handle this one of those 60s. I wouldn't say that there was psychological damage last week. That would be way too big of an overreaction, especially considering the unique and bizarre circumstances that led to that game being played late. But you want to see the girls come back out and make a statement here after getting it a little bit wrong last week with how they executed on both sides of the football.
John, we spoke about last week being a little bit of a litmus test for where the Eels were at for this season, and we saw probably as much a reinforcement about the strength of Newcastle rather than, where the Eels sit. I thought it was way below the Eels' best performance of the season, to the extent that I'm not sure that you could judge the Eels on that one. It was more of judging the Knights on that one, and perhaps where you might be able to judge the Eels is what they have to do to match a side like the Knights. Now, the Knights last week, everything seemed to be done at a faster pace than Parramatta. They looked like a group of athletes who were really on their game last week. Watching them live gave a real appreciation of when they were unleashing, they were really unleashing. Now, that's not meant as a knock on Parramatta in any way, because the Eels still had some bright spots. And in fact, partway through the second half, I thought, okay, the roll is happening now. The roll on is happening. And to an extent as well, I think the way the two teams play was still, it's different. The Eels aren't going to play a Newcastle brand football. Like Abby Church is a great footballer in her own right, but Upton is like up towards the freak end of the territory as far as a football is concerned.
Yep.
She's absolutely, undeniably one of the best players in women's rugby league, on a world stage. So she's going to feature a lot in their plays, and she's going to do damage because she is just so awkward to tackle. The Eels have their own strengths that are different to the Knights' strengths. So what we did see was the Knights' strengths fully flexing and the Parramatta strengths not flexing. So that created, I think, the points gulf. Is there a gulf between the teams? Probably still a little bit, but it's not as great as what that scoreboard showed. So was there any psychological damage, as you said? I don't think so. But what we have to look for this week is that the Eels have learnt from last week, but they are straight back to their processes. They're straight back to the type of football that Steve Georgalis wants to see them playing. And last week we had a lot more errors than we've had from Parramatta. We saw the defence opened up a lot more than what we had seen from Parramatta up till now. And of course, there's the class players that Newcastle have got that contribute to that and to applying a bit more pressure to a defence than or a different sort of pressure to the defence than they've had up till now. But the Dragons, they haven't had a good season. But you talk about some of the quality players that they've got, and you listed them, John. You don't want to give them a sniff. You just want to make sure that the Eels focus on getting their job done as they have been, and they will then get the victory. Look, I'm confident they'll get a victory. I'm confident they'll get a victory by around that 12-point mark. And like you, I'll be interested to see what happens around Lindsay Toohey. I just suspect. I don't know that she's going to come off the bench. I just wonder whether she's going to start. That's going to be the big question I'll be looking at. So, and we don't have any insight whatsoever in that regard. So, if we're speculating this, don't think we've been at training or seen.
Yeah, this isn't a cheeky little, comment like, "Oh yeah, watch out, she's coming in here." This is just pure speculative.
Yeah, and we've been speculating about Lindsay Toohey coming into this NRLW team from the moment that she's come back to football. So, John, I just said by about 12 points. I think I'm going to again go for Kennedy Cherrington as best on field. But man, have to keep giving the shout out to Chloe Jackson.
Yeah, she's come in really well, hasn't she?
Oh, she is absolutely the real deal. Absolutely the real deal. And first try scorer, let's go for Rory Owen in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the Murph for first try scorer, captain getting over down that left edge, playing off of Toi Hiku. And then best on field, let's go for Rachel Pearson. I think maybe a good day against her former club here. And then overall scoreline, Eels to bounce back. Maybe a bit of a statement game, maybe a 28-10 victory.
Sounds good, mate. Which now brings us to the main event, the Eels taking on the Dragons. The Dragons looking to get into finals football. The Eels looking to have a bit of form, a bit of confidence going into the Spoon Bowl clash with the Tigers next weekend. How does the Dragons team line up?
Yeah, so St George, interesting backline. They've got Tyrell Sloan, the dynamic but streaky fullback there, former Dragon, current Dragon, future Eel. There we go. Zach Lomax, he'll be on the right wing. Fascinating matchup with Micah Sebo pending there, with Christian Turbolotu on the other side. The two Finai boys in the centres, Maddie and Max, with Jack Bird at 5'8", Ben Hunt at halfback. You got Molo of the Francis variety at number 8 here. Sorry for just mute notifications there, with Jack DeBellin starting at prop on the other side there, Jacob Little dummy half, Luciano Leilua, Jaden Sewer in the back row, Tommy Eisenhu locking their scrum. Then they've got a pair of Couchmans on the bench, pair of Finais in the centres, pair of Couchmans on the interchange there, Toby and Ryan, Blake Laurie and Raymond Faitala Mariner rounding out their roster here, 60s. So it's not a bad team by any means, and in saying that, it's also a reflection of the good work that Flanagan has done to make them tougher and more competitive this year. But in saying that, they've got some genuine strike there in Sloan and Lomax in particular, and you've always got to respect the threat that Ben Hunt represents, both as a dummy and run sort of halfback and just a scheming, competitive guy in general.
Yeah. So I respect an opponent that's got some pace, and they've got some pace. I respect an opponent where you've got a clever game manager, and they certainly have that. So how do the Eels line up in comparison?
Yeah, so nothing outrageous here. We actually are per the team sheet from last Team was Tuesday, which means Quinton Gufferson at fullback, Mike Acevo and Sean Russell on the wings, Will Penasini and Blaise Talangi in the centres, Dillbags and Dejan in the halves, Reg, as he's what we expect to be his last home game as an Eel. He'll start in the number 10 of Sean Lane, in the number 8 of Sean Lane in number 10, with Brendan Hands at dummy half, Kelma Tuolangi and Bryce Cartwright are the edge back rowers, Joe Offengahi locking the scrum, bench C's Joey Lussick, Makesi Makatoa, Luca Moretti and Dan Keir there. So the big one there being Luca Moretti. If he has overcome that quadriceps injury, he pushes Jake Tungor, to 18th man. But in saying that, there's been some reports about various players maybe being a bit banged up and not available here. I've seen an Instagram report about Quentin Gufferson having a hand issue 60s. I'm not sure if there's a couple other players that are subject to maybe some watch this space sort of territory. But as it stands, Eels, very similar to the team that took on the Broncos, and the same team named from last Team List Tuesday.
Look, I guess the main take that you have from that, where there's speculation, and I haven't been to a captain's run, and even if I see any change in the captain's run, it's not like I'm going to report what's happening in the way of players that might be in doubt. But once you start to have a lot of speculation about players in doubt, what you do is you make sure you just don't bet on the game.
Yep.
You've got I look at that from a punting perspective, because if the team has late changes, it's never a great thing, but we don't know if there's going to be late changes with this. What we will say is that the Eels in the last couple of months of football have been all effort, and the execution's been good for probably about 55, 60 minutes. Sometimes it's been good for 73 minutes. But they just haven't quite got the job done. And whether you talk about as we have, as Shelley did in a post this week, that it's game management, it's discipline, it's football IQ, whatever way that you want to put it down to. When there's been some key moments in the game, we've come up short. And look, I think the Dragons are still a team which come up short as well in those sorts of areas, and they've probably been wildly inconsistent as well, because you've seen their good performances and you've also seen them cop some hidings. They almost remind me of Parramatta from, say, about 2019, where you would get some great performances out of the team, and then every so often there'd be like this howler of a game, and you're like, what's going on here? How did we get dismantled like this? And that's how the Dragons feel like to me. I think they are a team that is on the rise in terms of what Flanagan's done with the team, how he's shaped them, their mindset, their attitude towards football, getting the best out of certain players. So they're a work in progress. Parramatta, where I don't know that you can look at this team now and say this will be the team next year. I think we're heading for a reshaping. Like for mine, it's just basically, and this sounds like a ridiculously obvious thing to say, but it's how they execute on the day. Like I think we can feel confident that Parramatta will put in the effort. I think we know that the Dragons are really going to put in a big game because their finals depends
a lot on the line. Yep.
Yeah. So, and given that there's going to be players in the Parramatta team that are saying farewell to their home fans, like when I talk about the team will be putting in an effort, last home game of the year, some farewells for players, and a team that has been high on effort. So, my expectation there doesn't change. And that's why I said it's how they're going to execute on the day. When they get to those moments, are they going to make smart decisions or not? Now, if they do, we're a real chance of beating a Dragons team that are just as likely to pull out some moments that leave you scratching your head. We just have to look. Part of our execution is defensively, and especially on the left side, we have to be better at shutting down an attack which is probably going to target that side. And as you said, Hunt is scheming. You've got the explosive abilities of Lomax and of Sloan. You've got a really solid workman-like pack that the Dragons have got. I'm going to tip the Eels to get this done by 10 points. I think that we're probably going to look to strike through Will Penasini again. I tipped him as first try scorer last week, so I think there'll be a strike play there. We're looking for Will to be, on his best form this week and get him involved early. Let's get a try through him. And I think best on field, we'll go with Dylan Brown this week.
Yeah, look, I think the Dragons are going to be tough to topple here, so I will tip a Parramatta win, but it's tipping a win knowing that St George are going to be very fired up for an important result going their way. I will go for... let's get a little bit poetic. Reagan Campbell-Gillard to be first try scorer in his last home game as an Eel.
I like it, John. I like it.
We don't mind tipping a big man to get over early as well.
Yeah.
It's not the most likely outcome, but let's hope there's a little bit of a karmic justice here for the big fella to sign off at home with a bit of style. And then best on field, I will go. I do like the Dylan Brown pick there. Let's go for. There's as always usual suspects: Joe, Dylan, Guffo. Let's go Brendan Hands.
But yeah, very solid.
I think he's had a really strong back half of the year, and he's a not to say that he needs to be securing his position under the new coach, but I think he will be looking to cement his spot as the number one dummy half for season 2025, and then the Eels to win is what probably be a high scoring one. We know that we're prone to a cheeky little collapse or defensive lapse or two. So Eels 28 to Dragons 26. Yeah, I know.
I'm not going to win. I'm not going to enjoy sitting through the last few minutes
of that sort of game. Exactly. In saying that, though, if you do sit through it, you can get out into the field. I believe Sixties in the post game here. They'll be opening up Combank to people to have a walk around. So if you've got a young family member or someone that's really keen to see what it's like to be out there, make sure to take advantage of that. And rounds out a huge block of games at Combank with a couple of teams in the, I know they're not playing at Combank, but the Flegg and the NRLW looking to make bigger things happen this week. But for the Flegg, they're going to have a very nervous wait for that 5:20 p.m. kickoff. But until then, they're going to take care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, we powered through it, mate. I think we brought this in under an hour, which is...
Considering the amount of extra news we're talking about, good effort.
Yes, and thank you as well to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Reminder, we're on at Parramatta Leagues Club from midday tomorrow. Special guest John Muggleton. You'll be able to come in, listen to our footy talk about a few interesting things that we got planned with Muggo, and still get over for the start of the NRLW clash. And as for our loyal listeners, mate, what more can I say? We're nearly through this season. It doesn't mean we stop the podcast when the season's over, but we're nearly through the season from hell. Stick with us. We still got a couple of games to go with the NRL, a few more with the NRLW. And as I always say, mate, go you mighty Eels.